Hey there, travelers. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now let's begin our journey into the unknown. I was 21 years old when I met an angel for the first time, and I was standing on the Androscoggin River Bridge in Lewiston, Maine, ready to end everything. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. October rain in Maine isn't gentle. It's cold and relentless, the kind that soaks through your jacket and settles into your bones. I remember the sound of it hitting the metal railing, a constant drumming that almost drowned out my thoughts. Almost. My hands were shaking as I gripped the wet steel. Not from the cold, from everything else. Marcus had been dead for 8 months. 8 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days to be exact, or days to be. I counted every single one. My little brother, 17 years old, with his whole life ahead of him. Gone because of me. Because I'd come home wasted at 2 in the morning and passed out with a cigarette still burning. Because I was too selfish, too broken, too high to remember to put it out. The fire started in my bedroom. By the time the smoke detectors went off, it had already spread to the hallway. Marcus's room was at the end of that hallway. They told me he never woke up. Smoke inhalation, they said. Peaceful, they said. As if there was anything peaceful about dying at 17 because your older brother was a screw-up. I hadn't been sober since the funeral. Couldn't be. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. Not the way he looked in the casket, waxy and wrong, but the way he'd looked 3 days before the fire when I'd promised him I was getting clean. That crooked smile he always had when he believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. "You got this, Jamie," he'd said, using the nickname nobody else was allowed to use. "I know you do." I didn't have it. I never had it. And he paid the price. Standing on that bridge, the Androscoggin churning dark and fierce below me, I thought about how easy it would be. 1 step. Maybe 2. Then nothing. No more guilt. No more nightmares. No more waking up every morning with the crushing weight of knowing I'd killed the only person who ever truly believed in me. My phone had died hours ago. I'd stopped answering it days before that anyway. My parents, what was left of them after burying their youngest son, had stopped calling. My few friends from the warehouse where I worked night shifts had given up trying to reach me. I was alone, which was exactly what I deserved. I put 1 foot on the lower railing. The metal was slick with rain, and I had to grip tighter to keep my balance. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. This was how James Bancroft's pathetic story would end. Not with redemption or recovery, but with a coward's exit from a life he'd already destroyed. I took a breath, started to lift my other foot, and then the world turned white. I don't mean the rain stopped or a car's headlights hit me. I mean everything. The bridge, the river, the industrial buildings of Lewiston stretching out behind me, the October sky. All of it vanished into pure, searing light. Not the kind that burns your eyes. The kind that burns through them, past them, into something deeper. I fell backward onto the bridge deck, landing hard on my back. The impact should have knocked the wind out of me, but I couldn't feel it. Couldn't feel anything except the presence of something massive, something impossible, something that made every cell in my body scream that I was in the presence of something holy. The light began to take shape. Wings. That's what I saw first. Not feathered wings like in paintings or church windows. These were made of light itself, each filament shimmering and alive, moving with a geometry that hurt to look at directly. They stretched impossibly wide, spanning the entire bridge, maybe beyond, and at the center, where the wings met, a figure. Tall. So tall I had to crane my neck back to see its face, even lying down. The features were hard to make out through the radiance, but I could see eyes, deep and ancient and filled with something that might have been compassion, or might have been pity. The distinction didn't seem important. When it spoke, I didn't hear words. Not exactly. The voice resonated inside my skull, inside my chest, inside the hollow space where my soul should have been. James Bancroft. My name had never sounded like that before. Had never carried that much weight. I tried to speak. Couldn't. My throat had closed up entirely. And even if it hadn't, what do you say when you're face to face with something that shouldn't exist? The being lowered itself. Not walking, just descending through space until it was closer to my level. The wings folded partially, dimming the light enough that I could see more details. The face was beautiful in a way that made human beauty seem crude. Masculine but not male, feminine but not female, beyond such simple categories. "You were about to make a choice," the voice said. "A final choice." I managed a nod. Tears were streaming down my face, mixing with the rain that I could suddenly feel again. "I know your pain, James. I know the burden you carry, the guilt that consumes you." "Marcus," I choked out. "I killed him. I killed my brother." "You made a terrible mistake," the being said. "But your story does not have to end here. Your suffering does not have to be meaningless." I wanted to argue, wanted to scream that it was meaningless, that I was meaningless, that the world would be better off without me in it. But I couldn't speak. The angel, because what else could it be, extended one hand toward me. The palm was marked with symbols I didn't recognize, glowing faintly. "I have come to offer you a purpose, James Bancroft. A chance at redemption, a path through your darkness." "Why?" I managed. "Why me?" "Because you were chosen. Before you were born, before your brother drew his first breath, before this bridge was built, you were chosen for a task that only you can complete." The air around us began to shift. The rain fell in slow motion, each droplet hanging suspended, and then I saw it. Visions, pouring into my mind with crushing force. I saw oceans turning crimson, thick and viscous as blood. I saw fish floating belly up by the millions, their scales reflecting a red sky. The second trumpet, some distant part of my mind whispered, though I'd barely cracked open a Bible in my entire life. I saw stars falling. Not metaphorically, actual stars, or what looked like stars, plummeting from the heavens like burning coals scattered from a fire. They struck the earth, and where they landed, everything died. Plants withered, animals collapsed, people fell to their knees, clutching their throats, their eyes wide with terror. I saw cities, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, familiar skylines rendered alien by the destruction raining down on them. Buildings crumbled as the ground split open beneath them. I watched the Sears Tower buckle and fall. Watched the Golden Gate Bridge snap in half and plunge into water that boiled and steamed. I saw things rising from the depths. From the ocean, from caves, from cracks in the earth that shouldn't exist. Creatures that defied description. Too many limbs, too many eyes. Shapes that twisted in ways that made my brain hurt to process. Locusts the size of horses, with faces that looked almost human. Almost. I saw a throne, made of bones and fire and suffering. And sitting on that throne, something that wore a crown and smiled with teeth that went back too far, in a mouth that opened too wide. I saw an altar under the earth, soaked in blood that never dried. And beneath that altar, souls, millions of them, crying out in voices that shredded the fabric of reality itself. "How long?" they screamed. "How long until justice?" I saw the sky split open, not like a curtain parting, like flesh tearing. Through the wound in reality, I saw things that shouldn't be seen. Geometries that existed in too many dimensions, colors that didn't have names, and eyes. Countless eyes, watching, waiting, hungry. The visions kept coming, each one more terrible than the last, until I thought my mind would shatter from the weight of them. This was the end of everything. The apocalypse. Not the abstract concept from sermons or movies, but the real thing. Visceral, immediate, absolute. And then it stopped. I was back on the bridge, gasping for air, my fingernails digging into the wet pavement. I'd vomited without realizing it. My whole body shook with tremors I couldn't control. "What you have seen," the angel said, its voice somehow gentle despite its power, "is what will come to pass. The seals are weakening. The trumpets are ready to sound. The end of all things approaches." "No," I whispered. "No, that can't be real. It is already written, already set in motion. Unless..." I looked up at the being, desperate for the hope I heard in that single word. Unless what? Unless someone stops it. Unless someone stands between the darkness and the dawn. unless someone is willing to carry the burden of the world on their shoulders. The angel knelt beside me, and I felt warmth radiating from it. Real warmth, cutting through the October chill and the rain and the emptiness inside me. You, James Bancroft, can be that someone. Your suffering has prepared you. Your guilt has carved out space inside you for something greater. Your brother's death, though tragic, has brought you to this moment, to this choice. I thought about Marcus, about his smile, about the promise I'd broken. I don't understand, I said. How could I possibly stop something like that? I'm nobody. I'm worse than nobody. I'm a waste of space who killed his own brother. You will be my instrument, the angel said. I will guide you, show you the signs, lead you to the places where the seals can be closed, where the trumpets can be silenced, where the end can be prevented. But you must choose this path willingly. You must dedicate yourself completely. No half measures, no turning back. I looked over the railing at the dark water below. 5 minutes ago, that had been my choice. Oblivion. An ending. Now I was being offered something else. Not an ending, but a beginning. A chance to matter. A chance to save not just myself, but everyone. A chance to make Marcus's death mean something. What do I have to do? I asked. The angel placed its hand on my forehead. The touch was electric, sending currents of something, not quite pain, not quite pleasure, through every nerve in my body. Believe, it said. Serve, obey. When I call, you will answer. When I show you the path, you will walk it. When I reveal the signs, you will act. Can you do this, James Bancroft? I thought about those visions, about the blood-red oceans and the falling stars and the things rising from the deep, about every person on Earth screaming as the world ended around them. I thought about having the power to prevent that, the responsibility, the purpose. Yes, I said. Yes, I can. Then rise. I stood. My legs shouldn't have been able to support me. I'd been drinking for 3 days straight, hadn't eaten in almost as long. But I rose steady and strong. The rain had stopped, I realized. The clouds were parting. October moonlight spilled across the bridge, turning everything silver. The angel spread its wings wide one final time, and the light intensified until I had to close my eyes. Your first test will come soon, its voice echoed. Be ready, be faithful, and remember, the fate of the world rests on your shoulders now. When I opened my eyes, I was alone on the bridge. But something was different. I looked down at my right hand and saw it. A mark on my palm, about 2 inches long, shaped like a cross. The skin around it was puckered and red, as if I'd been burned, but there was no pain, just a faint warmth, like a promise. I stood there for what might have been minutes or hours, staring at that mark, trying to process what had just happened. An angel. Real, undeniable, impossible. And it had chosen me, given me a mission, a purpose. For the first time since the fire, since Marcus, since everything fell apart, I felt something other than crushing despair. I felt hope. I walked home through the empty streets of Lewiston, my mind racing with the visions and the angel's words. My apartment was a disaster when I arrived. Empty bottles everywhere, curtains drawn tight against the world. Looking at it now made my stomach turn. I spent the rest of the night cleaning, threw out every bottle, every reminder of who I'd been. When dawn broke, I was sitting at my small kitchen table with Marcus's Bible in front of me. He'd been the religious one in our family. I opened it with shaking hands and started reading. Genesis, Exodus, Revelation, the seals, the trumpets, the bowls of wrath. It was all there, laid out in John's vision, written 2,000 years ago, the same things I'd seen on the bridge. That evening, I went to the church Marcus used to attend. A small, white clapboard building tucked between a laundromat and a hardware store. I'd never actually been inside. The sanctuary was empty, lit only by evening light. I sat in the back row and tried to pray for the first time in my life. God, I whispered, I don't know if you can hear me. But if what happened last night was real, then I'm ready. I'm ready to serve. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. James? I turned to see an older man in a cardigan, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I'm Pastor Green. You must be Marcus Bancroft's brother. The name hit me in the chest. You knew Marcus? Wonderful young man. We were all heartbroken when we heard about the fire. He sat down in front of me. I don't think I've seen you at services before. I told him about the bridge, about the light, about the mission I'd been given. I expected skepticism, but Pastor Green nodded slowly. The Lord works in mysterious ways, he said quietly. And he often calls us in our darkest moments. Your brother prayed for you every single day. The tears came then. When I finally composed myself, Pastor Green spoke again. If God has given you a mission, James, then you'll need to prepare yourself. Come back tomorrow. Let's begin your education. Over the next 3 weeks, I threw myself into preparation. I attended services, met with Pastor Green to study scripture, read everything I could about angels and prophecy. I stopped drinking completely. Stopped smoking. The nightmares about Marcus changed. Instead of his accusing eyes, I started seeing him smiling. I even called my parents. Jamie? My mother's voice cracked when she answered. Is that really you? Yeah, Mom. I'm trying to be better. For Marcus. For you and Dad. She cried. We both did. It wasn't a magic fix, but it was a start. 3 weeks and 2 days after the angel appeared, I woke at 2 in the morning with absolute certainty burning in my chest. It was time. The vision came instantly. I saw a hospital, Maine General Medical Center in Augusta, a specific floor, a specific room, and I saw something terrible waiting there, coiled and ready to spread. The first seal. Unless I stopped it. I was in my car within 5 minutes. Augusta was 40 minutes north. I drove through the pre-dawn darkness, the vision guiding me like coordinates burned into my brain. The hospital parking lot was mostly empty. I walked to the main entrance, my heart hammering but my steps steady. I had no plan, but the angel had promised to guide me. The automatic doors slid open. A tired-looking woman at reception glanced up. Can I help you? The warmth spread from my palm, up my arm, into my chest. Words came to me, clear and certain. I'm here about the patient in room 347. There's something wrong. Something you need to see right now. She frowned. Sir, visiting hours don't start until... Please. People are going to die if you don't listen to me. Room 347. Check the patient. Check the lab samples. Now. Something in my voice made her pause. She picked up her phone, called security, but also paged a doctor. 2 security guards arrived, ready to escort me out. But before they could, a woman in a white coat came rushing down the hallway, her face pale. Oh my God, she said, stopping short. How did you know? Everyone stared at her. Room 347. The patient spiked a fever. We just got the lab results. It's not flu. It's something we've never seen before. Highly contagious. If it had gotten out of that room, if we hadn't been monitoring... She looked at me with confusion and awe. Who are you? I had no answer that would make sense. As the hospital went into lockdown, as CDC notifications were sent out, as a potential pandemic was contained before it could begin, I felt the warmth in my palm fade to a gentle glow. I had just closed the first seal, saved the world for the first time. I walked out of that hospital as the sun rose over Augusta, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or doubt, from the sheer magnitude of what had just happened, what I'd been part of. The drive back to Lewiston passed in a blur. My mind kept replaying the doctor's face, the panic in her voice when she talked about what could have happened if that pathogen had spread. Millions could have died. The first seal, plague, pestilence, the rider on the white horse conquering through disease. And I'd stopped it. Me, James Bancroft, the screw-up who killed his brother, the drunk who'd been ready to throw himself off a bridge 3 weeks ago. God had used me to save countless lives. When I got home, I fell to my knees and prayed. Really prayed. Thanking God for choosing me, for giving me purpose. I prayed until my voice grew hoarse. When I opened my eyes, I saw it again. wings made of light, watching, approving. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for saving me." For the first time since Marcus died, I had a reason to live. A mission that mattered. I was going to save the world. I called Pastor Green and told him everything. He listened, and when I finished, there was a long silence. "James," he finally said, "the Lord has placed an incredible burden on your shoulders. You've been chosen for something extraordinary." "I know," I said. "This is what I'm meant to do. This is why the angel came to me." "Then you must be vigilant," Pastor Green said. "Stay grounded in Scripture. Trust in the guidance you've been given." "I will," I promised. "I won't let God down. I won't let Marcus down." Over the following weeks, I continued my studies. I memorized Revelation, studied the seals and trumpets, learned to recognize the signs of the end times. The mark on my palm remained, a constant reminder. Sometimes it would grow warm, and I learned to recognize this as a sign to pray, to listen, to prepare. I quit drinking entirely, gave up smoking, attended services 3 times a week. My parents were grateful to have their son back from the edge. I was a new man, reborn, saved not just from death, but for a purpose greater than anything I'd ever imagined. And I was ready. Ready for whatever God asked of me. Ready to stand between humanity and the apocalypse. The angel had chosen me, and I would not fail. 14 years. That's how long I've walked this path. 14 years of missions and visions. 14 years of believing I was doing God's work. I'm 35 now, sitting in a roadside diner in New Mexico. And I want you to understand what those years looked like, what I sacrificed, what I accomplished. After Augusta, everything changed. I kept my warehouse job for 8 months, saving every penny. Then I quit. Sold everything except Marcus's Bible, and bought a used van for $1,200. That van became my home, my church, my war room. I was mobile, was free to go wherever God needed me. The visions came regularly every few months, each one as vivid as that first night on the bridge. Pastor Green understood. The last time I saw him, he prayed over me for 20 minutes. "Remember, James, works without discernment can lead you astray. Always test the spirits." I promised I would. The first year was hard, living out of the van, finding odd jobs for cash. But I never lost focus. The visions guided me south, Texas, Louisiana. 3 months in the Gulf region, sensing something building. Then came Miami, July 2012. Sweltering heat that made the van feel like an oven even at night. I was parked in a rest stop outside Tallahassee, windows cracked, trying to sleep through the humidity, when the vision hit. Miami drowning, not gradually, all at once. A wall of water surging through Brickell Avenue, sweeping luxury cars off the roads like children's toys. I saw people clinging to palm trees, to lampposts, to anything that might keep them above the rising tide. Saw buildings crumbling as the ocean pressed against them with force that shouldn't be possible. And above it all, the sky, churning with clouds that moved wrong, too organized, too purposeful. Rotating around a central point that pulsed with sickly green light that hurt to look at even in the vision. The first trumpet, something whispered in my mind, but altered, adapted. A hybrid catastrophe for a modern world. I was on the road within 10 minutes, my hands shaking on the wheel. The van's engine protested as I pushed it past 80 on I-95, praying it wouldn't give out. The mark on my palm burned hotter than ever, a physical compass pulling me south. I made it to Miami by dawn. The city was already buzzing with nervous energy. Every radio station, every TV and every storefront showing the same thing. A hurricane had formed overnight in the Caribbean. The meteorologists couldn't hide their confusion. Storms didn't form that fast, didn't organize that perfectly. They were calling it unprecedented and inexplicable. I knew better. The warmth in my palm led me through downtown Miami's glass canyons to a concrete building near the university campus. Atlantic Atmospheric Research Center, according to the sign. Most of the staff was focused on the approaching storm. Security was minimal. I'd learned that conviction could open doors, credentials couldn't. I walked in like I belonged there. following the heat in my palm until I found her. A young researcher, maybe 25, frantically typing at a computer surrounded by satellite imagery. "The storm," I said without preamble. "There's something wrong with the formation pattern." She looked up, startled. Dark circles under her eyes. "Too much coffee, not enough sleep." "Excuse me? Who are you?" "Someone who can help. Pull up the infrared satellite data from when it first formed. Not the visible spectrum, infrared. Look at the eye." "Sir, I don't know who you are, but I can't just—" "People are going to die if you don't listen to me," I said, and the words came from somewhere deeper than my own knowledge. From that place where the angel's voice lived. "Thousands of them. Please, just look." Maybe it was the desperation in my voice. Maybe it was divine intervention working through her. But something made her pause, made her turn back to her computer and pull up the data I'd requested. We both stared at the screen. In the infrared spectrum, invisible to normal observation, there was a pattern in the storm's eye. Geometric, precise, like something had seeded it, given it structure and malevolent purpose. Like someone, or something, had reached into the Caribbean and carved a weapon out of wind and water. "That's not possible," she breathed. "That's not... Weather doesn't do that." "Show your supervisors," I told her, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Tell them to recalculate the storm's trajectory using this data as a variable. It's not going to behave like a natural hurricane." I left before she could ask more questions, before security could arrive, before anyone could stop me or demand explanations I couldn't give. I spent the next 2 days in my van, parked in a Publix parking lot, praying constantly, watching the news on a battery-powered radio I'd bought at a pawn shop, listening as meteorologists grew increasingly confused. The hurricane was supposed to make landfall south of Miami as a Category 4, possibly strengthening to Category 5. Evacuation orders were issued. The city prepared for devastation. I listened to people calling into radio shows terrified, asking if they should leave or shelter in place. But 36 hours before predicted landfall, something changed. The hurricane turned. Not gradually, almost at a right angle, heading north along the coast instead of west toward the city. And as it moved, it began to weaken, rapidly. Within 12 hours it had dropped to Category 2, then Category 1, then a tropical storm. Meteorologists couldn't explain it, called it a miracle. Said Miami had dodged a bullet. I knew better. I'd checked the research center's public data feed on a library computer. The geometric pattern in the eye had disappeared around the same time the trajectory changed. Whatever had been guiding that storm, whatever apocalyptic purpose it had been seeded with, had been disrupted when that researcher showed the data to her supervisors. When human awareness touched something that was supposed to remain hidden. I'd stopped it, closed another seal, prevented the first trumpet from sounding. I wept in my van that night, overwhelmed with gratitude and awe. God was using me, actually using me. A broken addict who'd killed his own brother was now standing between humanity and the end of the world. The visions came more frequently after that, as if proving myself had opened some kind of floodgate. Baton Rouge 3 months later, a contaminated water supply I managed to report before anyone drank from it. Atlanta 6 months after that, a warehouse fire I called in before it could spread to the residential neighborhood next door. Charleston the following spring, a gas leak in a school that I detected before classes started for the day. Small interventions mostly, but each one potentially catastrophic if left unchecked. Each time, the warmth in my palm would guide me to the exact right place at the exact right moment. I wasn't always successful in preventing every casualty. Sometimes people died before I could intervene. A car crash I couldn't prevent in time. A heart attack that happened too far away for me to reach. Those failures haunted me, drove me to pray harder, to stay more alert, to move faster when the visions came. By 2014, I'd developed a routine. Find work in whatever city the visions had taken me to. Enough to keep the van running and put food in my stomach. Study scripture for hours each day, looking for patterns, for prophecies that might hint at where the next seal would try to open. And wait. Always waiting for the angel to guide me to the next mission. Seraphil appeared to me 4 more times during those years. Never as dramatically as that first night on the bridge, but always unmistakable. Once in a dream so vivid I woke up with the scent of ozone and sanctity still in my nostrils. Once as a shimmer in the air while I was reading Revelation in a Nashville library. Twice as that familiar warmth spreading through my entire body, filling me with certainty and purpose. Each appearance brought the same message. Keep going. Stay faithful. The work isn't finished. Then came Chicago. October 2015. I was in Springfield, Illinois, doing landscaping work for a retirement community. Mid-afternoon, eating a sandwich during my lunch break when the vision struck. I dropped the food, my whole body going rigid. An abandoned church on the south side of Chicago. Windows broken, graffiti covering brick walls. But inside, symbols painted on the floor in what looked like dried blood. Candles arranged in patterns that made my eyes hurt. Hooded figures chanting words that seemed to resonate wrong, like reality itself was rejecting the sounds. The beast, my mind supplied. Preparing a place for the beast to enter the world. I was in my van within an hour, didn't even collect my last paycheck. The 3-hour drive felt like 3 days. The mark on my palm burned so hot I had to wrap it in a wet cloth from a gas station bathroom. Finding the church was easy. The vision had given me perfect detail. It sat on a desolate corner in Inglewood, surrounded by vacant lots and boarded-up buildings. Even from outside, I could feel something wrong emanating from it. A pressure in the air, like the world was holding its breath. The front door wasn't locked. I pushed it open and stepped into darkness that seemed thicker than normal shadow. The symbols were there, just as I'd seen them, covering the floor of what had once been the sanctuary. But there were no hooded figures, no chanters, just papers scattered near the altar, photocopies of ancient texts, diagrams, notes in several different languages. And I understood. I gathered every scrap and burned them, watched centuries of knowledge turn to ash. The wrongness lifted. I'd closed another seal. But I didn't celebrate this time. Something felt wrong. The fragments I'd read before burning them. They mentioned warnings, containment, binding, not summoning, but preventing summoning. I pushed the doubt away. The vision had shown me what to do. I had to trust that guidance, even when my limited human understanding couldn't grasp the full picture. That's what faith was, after all. Trusting God even when you couldn't see the complete plan. The next major mission came in 2018, Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'd been living in the Southwest for almost a year. The desert heat brutal, but the work steady. I was framing houses at a construction site when a woman in the office mentioned her daughter. "She's a nurse at the university hospital," the woman said, making conversation while I filled out a timesheet. "Worried about some patients, flu-like symptoms, but the tests keep coming back inconclusive." The mark on my palm flared hot enough to make me gasp. "Which hospital?" I managed to ask. 2 hours later, I was at University of New Mexico Hospital. The warmth in my palm led me through corridors to the 4th floor. Infectious diseases wing. I saw her at the nurse's station. Early 30s, dark hair pulled back, head in her hands, name tag, R. Mendez. "Rachel," I said. The name came to me like everything else, divine knowledge flowing through me. "You're worried about the patients with the unknown illness." She looked up, startled. "How did you know my name? Who are you?" "Someone who can help. Room 412. Check the ventilation system in that room. There's something in the air filtration." She stared at me, weighing whether to call security or listen to this stranger. "How could you possibly—" "Please," I said. "I know how this sounds, but people are going to die if you don't check. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to verify what I'm saying." Maybe it was something in my eyes, some echo of the angel's conviction. But she picked up the phone and called maintenance. What they found shouldn't have been possible. A biological growth in the air filtration system, releasing spores for weeks. Every patient with mysterious symptoms had spent time in or near room 412. The hospital went into lockdown. CDC was called. The growth was removed and incinerated. Crisis contained. 2 days later, Rachel found me in the hospital cafeteria. I'd been sleeping in my van in the parking lot, making sure nothing else manifested. "How did you know?" she asked, sitting across from me with coffee she wasn't drinking. "About room 412. The ventilation." "How?" "I have visions," I said simply. of bad things that are going to happen. Sometimes I'm shown how to stop them. She studied my face. The doctors said if that growth had spread to other parts of the system, pandemic-level catastrophe. But it didn't. We stopped it in time. Over the next week, while she finished her shifts and I stayed in Albuquerque, we talked. I told her about my journey, about the visions and missions, about believing I'd been chosen for something important. I didn't tell her about the angel. That felt too sacred. Rachel was skeptical, but open-minded. She'd seen too much in medicine to dismiss everything as impossible. "What if you're wrong?" she asked one evening as we sat in a park. "What if that growth was natural? What if it could have led to medical breakthroughs?" The question caught me off guard. It was going to kill people. "The visions showed you what you interpreted as danger," she said gently. "But James, you're not a doctor. How can you be sure?" Her words unsettled me, but I pushed the doubt away. I have to trust what I'm shown. I have to have faith. She didn't look convinced. We parted ways when another vision pulled me toward Texas. I never saw Rachel Mendez again, but her question stayed with me. What if you're wrong? I couldn't afford to be wrong. The stakes were too high. So I doubled down on my faith, studied scripture even more intensely, prayed for hours asking for clarity. And the visions kept coming. Small interventions, a gas leak reported before explosion, a bridge inspection before rush hour. Each time, my palm guided me. Each time I believed I was preventing the apocalypse. The years blurred, 2019, 2020, 2021, living lean in the van, body harder, more weathered, face lined from sun and stress and purpose. Boston came in late 2021. I was working at a bookstore in Providence, Rhode Island. Minimum wage, shelving inventory, but it kept me fed. One afternoon in the religious section, I saw a book about Coptic manuscripts. Mentioned a recent translation of an ancient text, the Testament of Enoch. Not the well-known Book of Enoch, but something older. Something that had been kept hidden. The mark on my palm burned. I bought the book, read it that night in my van. A copy of the manuscript was at Boston College, being translated by a Jesuit scholar named Father Bernard de Luca. The vision came as I finished reading. I saw the manuscript pages, covered in ancient script, saw Father de Luca bent over them with scholarly precision, translating word by word. And I saw what was happening. With each correctly interpreted syllable, something was being released. An invocation, a summoning, a gateway being pried open. I drove to Boston before dawn. Finding Father De Luca took hours of waiting in the cold hallway outside his office. When he finally appeared, late 60s, gentle face, wearing a Roman collar, I stood. "Father De Luca, I need to talk to you about the Testament of Enoch." Surprise crossed his features. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "No, sir, but I know what you're working on. That manuscript is dangerous. You need to stop translating it." His expression shifted to wariness. "Young man, I don't know who sent you, but nobody sent me, but every word you translate brings something closer. An invocation, a gateway, part of the apocalypse machinery. I think you should leave. Please, I've been given visions. I've been shown security," he called down the hallway. I had maybe 30 seconds. I made a choice. I lunged past him into his office, saw the manuscript pages spread across his desk, and grabbed them. He shouted, tried to stop me, but I was younger, faster, desperate. I ran. That night, in a rest stop outside Hartford, Connecticut, I burned the pages, watched ancient knowledge turn to ash, just as I had in Chicago. The wrongness lifted. Another seal closed. But Father De Luca's face haunted me. The shock, the betrayal. He'd been a scholar, a man of God, trying to understand ancient wisdom. And I'd burst into his life and destroyed his work. What if Rachel was right? What if I was interfering with things I didn't fully understand? No, I couldn't think that way. Doubt was the adversary's weapon. I had to trust the visions, trust the angel, trust that I was being guided correctly. The years continued. More missions, more interventions, small and large. A child I kept from running into traffic who I later learned would grow up to develop cancer treatments. A woman I convinced not to board a specific flight that had mechanical failure 3 hours into the journey. By 2024, I was exhausted in ways I'd never been before. The visions came multiple times a week now. The mark on my palm rarely cooled completely. I'd lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. Developed a persistent cough from sleeping in the van through too many winters. But I kept going. Because the work wasn't finished. Because the apocalypse was still trying to break through, and I was standing in its way. And then came Sedona. 3 days ago, I was parked outside a Denny's in Flagstaff, in Arizona, trying to decide if I had enough cash for breakfast, when the vision hit with such force that I blacked out. When I came to, I was on the pavement next to my van. Someone was asking if I needed an ambulance. I waved them off, climbed back into the driver's seat with shaking hands. What I'd seen? Sedona. The red rocks glowing with more than sunset light. A monastery built into the cliffside, ancient and hidden. And 7 seals, all of them cracking simultaneously. All of them ready to burst open at once. The final seal. The last barrier. The ultimate mission. And the angel's voice, clear as crystal for the first time in 3 years. This is the culmination, James. Everything you've done, every seal you've closed, every mission you've completed, it has all led to this moment. Complete this final task, and the world will be saved. The apocalypse will be prevented permanently. Fail, and everything you've worked for will be undone. Everything. I sat in that parking lot for an hour, overwhelmed by the weight of it. 14 years. 14 years of sacrifice and wandering and faith. All coming down to one final mission. So here I am now, sitting in this roadside diner in New Mexico, one state away from my destiny. Drinking coffee that tastes like motor oil but keeps me awake. Writing this down because I need to remember. Need to document what brought me here. Tomorrow I drive to Sedona. Tomorrow I find the monastery. Tomorrow I close the final seal and ensure humanity's survival. Tomorrow I fulfill the purpose that an angel gave me on a bridge in Lewiston, Maine, when I was 21 years old and ready to end everything. Tomorrow I save the world. God help me, I'm ready. The monastery wasn't on any map. I'd been driving for 18 hours straight when I reached Sedona, my hands cramping on the steering wheel, eyes burning from staring at empty highway. The van's engine made sounds it had never made before. Grinding, protesting, begging for mercy I couldn't afford to give. Arizona in late October is deceptive. The days still scorch, but the nights cut deep with cold that seeps into your bones. I'd pushed through both, stopping only for gas and bathroom breaks, fueled by truck stop coffee and the relentless burning in my palm. The vision had shown me exactly where to go. Northeast of Sedona, where the red rocks thrust up from the earth like the bones of ancient giants. The van struggled on the dirt roads leading out of town, suspension squealing over ruts and stones. I found the trailhead just as the sun began its descent, painting the cliffs in shades of crimson and gold that looked like the world was already on fire. A weather-beaten sign marked the path, but gave no indication of where it led. The name had been worn away by wind and time. The van couldn't go further. I parked in the small lot, empty except for one other vehicle, a dusty Jeep that looked like it had been there for days, and stepped out into air that smelled of juniper and something else. Something older. Like stone remembering what it was before it became stone. I checked my supplies. A backpack with 2 bottles of water, an emergency blanket, a flashlight, Marcus's Bible. The mark on my palm was so hot now that the skin around it had started to blister. I wrapped it in a bandana, but the heat seeped through. The trail switchbacked up the canyon wall, narrow and treacherous. Loose rocks skittered away beneath my boots. My legs trembled with each step. 14 years of living in a van, of irregular meals and constant stress, had left me thinner than I'd ever been, weaker. But the mission drove me forward. Halfway up, I had to stop. Not from exhaustion, though my lungs burned and my vision swam, but because I heard something. Singing. Not words exactly. More like the memory of a melody carried on wind that shouldn't exist in this sheltered canyon. It raised goosebumps on my arms and made my teeth ache. I kept climbing. The monastery appeared suddenly around a bend. One moment there was only rock and sky. The next I was staring at adobe walls the exact color of the cliffs. Camouflage. Deliberate invisibility. You could pass within 20 feet and never know it was there. The structure was old. Ancient, maybe. The walls showed repairs from different eras. Mud brick over stone. Newer adobe patching older sections. No windows on the outer walls. Just one entrance. A heavy wooden door bound with iron that had rusted to the color of dried blood. And voices inside. Multiple voices, speaking words that made the air itself seem to curdle. This was wrong. The vision had shown me the monastery empty. The seals ready to burst open on their own, needing only my presence to complete what 14 years of work had prepared. But someone was here. Someone was actively doing something. I pressed my ear to the door. The wood was warm, almost feverish. The voices grew clearer. Chanting. Rhythmic. In a language I didn't recognize, but that resonated in my bones, making them feel hollow. I pushed the door open. The interior was a single large chamber. Circular, with a domed ceiling painted with astronomical charts that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. Constellations I'd never seen. Geometries that hurt to follow. 7 stone pillars stood in a circle at the room's center. And between them, someone had drawn intricate symbols in what looked like salt and ash and something darker. A man knelt in the middle of the circle, mid-50s, graying hair pulled back in a short ponytail, wearing ordinary jeans and a faded button-down shirt rolled to the elbows. His hands were covered in the ash and salt from the symbols, and he held a leather-bound book that looked older than the monastery itself. He looked up when I entered. His eyes widened, not with surprise, but with recognition and despair. "No," he said, standing quickly, the book clutched to his chest. "No, you can't be here. Not now. Please, not yet." "Step away from the ritual," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The warmth in my palm had become agony, white-hot and insistent. "Whatever you're trying to summon, whatever seal you're trying to open, I'm here to stop you." The man's face contorted with confusion, then understanding, then something that looked like grief. "You don't know. Oh God, James Bancroft, you don't know what you've done." Hearing my name from his lips stopped me cold. "How do you—" "I know everything about you," he interrupted, his voice rough with emotion. "I've been following your trail for 5 years, trying to undo the damage, trying to stop what you've been helping to start." He gestured desperately at the symbols around him. "My name is Dr. Elias Harrow. I'm an occult researcher. I've spent 30 years studying apocalyptic prophecy, and you've been deceived." "Liar," I said, but the word came out weak, uncertain. "The angel that appeared to you," Harrow pressed. "Describe it to me. Everything." I hesitated, then spoke. "Wings of light, beautiful beyond description, a presence that radiated holiness. It saved me from ending my life, gave me purpose, showed me how to prevent the apocalypse." "Did it ever tell you its name?" Harrow interrupted. I found the name in my studies. Seraphiel." Harrow's face went pale. He set the book down carefully on the edge of the circle and took a step toward me. "James, listen to me very carefully. There is no angel named Seraphiel. Not in any authentic biblical text. Not in any legitimate angelology. That name comes from grimoires. Dark grimoires. Written by men trying to command demons by giving them false names of power." "No," I whispered, but my conviction was crumbling. "No, that's not possible. I saved people. Miami. The hurricane turned away." "The hurricane was already turning," Harrow said, his voice gentle now but relentless. "There were coastal defense workings all along the Atlantic seaboard, ancient weather rituals maintained by practitioners, by people who understood the old ways. The geometric pattern you saw? That was the working, the protection. When you revealed it to those researchers, when you made them consciously aware of it, you broke the ritual. You made them question it, doubt it, dismiss it as a data glitch." He pulled a tablet from a bag near the circle, fingers shaking as he pulled up news articles. "The storm turned north, hit the Carolinas. 43 people died, James. 43 people who would have lived if the working had remained intact. If you'd done nothing. The room tilted. I grabbed one of the stone pillars for support. No, that's not... The vision showed me... The vision showed you what you wanted to see, Harrow said. What you needed to believe. You were grieving, guilt-ridden. The perfect target for manipulation. All the demon had to do was tell you that you were special. That your suffering had meaning. That you could be a hero instead of a victim. Stop, I begged. But he continued, pulling up more files, more evidence. Chicago. That abandoned church. The symbols on the floor. Do you remember what they looked like? I nodded, unable to speak. They were Enochian wards. Protection sigils. That church had been a sacred site for 300 years, maintained by a secret order dedicated to keeping the beast imprisoned. The texts you burned? Those were the renewal rituals, the instructions for maintaining the binding. When you destroyed them, you removed one of 7 anchors that keep the beast locked away from our world. He showed me photographs. The same church across different eras, 1920s, 1850s, further back. Monks maintaining the symbols. 3 centuries of work, Harrow said quietly. Undone in an afternoon. My legs gave out. Albuquerque, I whispered. Tell me I saved those people. Harrow's expression softened. The growth was harmless. Researchers were studying it for treating antibiotic-resistant infections. You destroyed the only sample. Thousands die every year from infections that might have been cured. The patient's mild irritation cleared up on its own. Boston, Father DeLuca, was a guardian. The testament contained the seal's true names and strengthening invocations. Bernard was my friend. You destroyed one of humanity's defenses. He died 6 months later. Grief. Then why this deception? Free will. The seals require human agency. You had to believe you were doing good. He gestured at the circle. This is the 7th binding. If I complete it, I can lock everything down. But I need time. And I felt it behind me. The temperature didn't just drop, it inverted. The warmth that had been burning in my palm for 14 years suddenly reversed, becoming a cold so intense it felt like my hand was being plunged into liquid nitrogen. Ice crystals formed on my skin. My breath came out in clouds that fell to the floor like snow. The air itself curdled. That's the only way I can describe it. The atmosphere in the monastery separated into layers, visible to the naked eye, each one moving at a different speed, creating a nauseating sense of reality coming apart at the seams. Well done, my faithful servant. The voice was the same one I'd heard on the bridge 14 years ago, but without its disguise, without the veneer of divinity it had worn for so long. It was a sound that made my bones ache and my teeth feel loose in my gums. Each word hit like a physical blow, rippling through the air in waves I could see. I turned. The thing in the doorway wore the shape of the angel I'd known, but the way a corpse wears its skin. The wings were there, but they weren't made of light anymore. They were shadow-given dimension, smoke-given substance, the absolute absence of hope made manifest. They writhed with their own horrible life, and I could see that what I'd thought were feathers were actually hands. Thousands of tiny grasping hands opening and closing, reaching for things I couldn't see. The face, oh God, the face. It still held the echo of beauty I'd fallen in love with on that bridge, but it had peeled back. The skin hung in translucent sheets, revealing geometry beneath that couldn't exist in 3 dimensions. Angles that turned inward and outward simultaneously. Eyes that were simultaneously too many and not enough, arranged in patterns that made my brain scream. When it smiled, I saw that its mouth extended beyond the boundaries of its face, curving around the sides of its head, filled with teeth that looked like shards of broken mirrors, each one reflecting a different moment of my life. I saw Marcus burning, saw Miami drowning, saw the faces of everyone I'd doomed. "No!" I breathed, and the word came out as frost. "Oh yes," the demon said, and its voice resonated in frequencies that made the stone pillars crack. "Did you truly believe heaven would choose you, James Bancroft? A drunk who couldn't stay sober even for the brother he claimed to love? An addict so weak that the first time life became difficult, you chose the bottle over the boy?" Each word was a scalpel, cutting into old wounds I thought had healed. You saved me, I whispered through chattering teeth. On the bridge, you gave me purpose. I gave you damnation wrapped in the illusion of redemption, it corrected, moving into the room. Where its feet touched the ground, the stone blackened and cracked. And you embraced it so willingly, so desperately. You wanted so badly to believe that your pain meant something, that your guilt could be transformed into grace. All I had to do was tell you that you were special. It laughed, and the sound made the astronomical charts on the ceiling bleed. Do you know how many of you there are? Broken humans, drowning in regret, desperate for a chance to matter? You're not unique, James. You're not chosen. You're just convenient. Harrow was chanting louder now, faster, his voice rising above the demons, trying to complete the binding ritual before it was too late. The symbols on the floor began to glow with a pale blue light that pushed back against the wrongness emanating from the demon. The demon noticed, turned its terrible attention to Harrow. Dr. Elias Harrow, it said, and there was something almost like affection in its voice. Still fighting, still trying to save them. I admire your dedication. It's almost touching. Go back to hell, Harrow spat, not breaking his rhythm, not looking up from the book. I'm trying, the demon said pleasantly, but I want to bring some friends with me. The wing moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment Harrow was chanting. The next, his chest was simply open. Not torn, not ripped. Opened. Like a door being pulled back on hinges that had always been there, just waiting to be used. His ribs spread like fingers. His heart continued to beat, exposed to the air, each contraction visible in the pale light of the symbols. Harrow looked down at himself, made a small sound, not of pain, but of surprise. Like he'd discovered something unexpected and mildly interesting. Not your fault, he said, his eyes finding mine. Blood bubbled at his lips, but his voice was clear, strong. You didn't know, James. You couldn't have known. Then his heart stopped and he fell, and the light from the symbols began to fade. No! I screamed, lunging toward him, toward the book that had fallen from his hands. If I could just finish the ritual, complete what he'd started. The demon's hand closed around my throat, not tight enough to crush, just enough to hold, to keep me on my knees, facing the doorway, facing what was coming. Watch, it commanded. Watch what your faith has wrought. Outside, the sky screamed. The apocalypse I'd seen in visions was filtered, sanitized. The reality shattered all filters. The sky inverted. Blue became red, became black, became colors with no names. Through those colors, I saw what existed beyond. Things that had been waiting, hungry. Stars fled, winking out, not darkening, being consumed. The ground shuddered. 7 pillars cracked from internal pressure. The first shattered. Locusts poured out, dog-sized, with almost human faces. Too aware, too hungry. They swarmed toward Sedona. The screaming began. Phoenix, Flagstaff, Las Vegas, exponential. The second pillar, the third, each releasing worse horrors. The demon showed me. Miami's ocean turning to blood. Chicago burning, not buildings, but space itself. Boston collapsing into an endless throat. Do you understand now? It whispered. Do you see what you've done? My mind fragmented. 14 years, it continued. Every sacrifice, every denial, all in service to the end. The remaining pillars shattered. The monastery cracked. Sulfur, burning flesh, hope incinerating. And the beautiful part, you did it with love. Genuinely believed you were saving them. That's what makes it perfect. Its talons closed around my shoulders, and I felt them sink through skin, through muscle, finding bone. The pain hadn't started yet, but I knew it was coming. The demon was savoring this moment, extending it. Do you want to know the best part? It asked, its mouth so close to my ear that I could feel things crawling in its breath. The part that makes this truly art? I couldn't answer. My voice had fled. You'll live forever, the demon said. Down in the depths, in the places where the damned go, you'll be conscious, aware, and they'll know you, All of them. Every soul that ends up there because the world ended. They'll know your name, know your face, know that you're the reason they're suffering. Through the haze of terror, images flooded my mind. Not visions this time, memories, real ones. I saw Rachel in Albuquerque, sitting across from me in that hospital cafeteria, asking the question I'd refused to hear. What if you're wrong? I saw Father DeLuca's face when I burst into his office. The shock, the betrayal. A man of God whose life's work I destroyed in minutes because I was so certain I knew better. I saw Pastor Green praying over me that first night in the church, his faith in my redemption so pure, so genuine, and I'd taken that faith and used it as fuel to destroy everything. I saw my mother's face on the phone when I told her I was getting better. The hope in her voice, the relief. She'd thought she was getting her son back. She had no idea she was talking to the man who would end her world. And I saw Marcus, not burning, not dying, but alive. 17 years old, with that crooked smile he always had when he believed in me. You got this, Jamie. I know you do. I hadn't had it. I'd never had it. But I'd been so desperate to believe I did. So desperate to prove that his death meant something. That my guilt could be transformed into purpose. The demon had known exactly what I needed to hear. And I'd listened. God help me. I'd listened with my whole heart. I'm sorry, I whispered. And I didn't know who I was apologizing to anymore. Marcus, my parents, Rachel, Father DeLuca, Dr. Harrow lying dead at my feet, Pastor Green, every single person on earth whose world was ending because I'd been too broken, too desperate, too willing to believe I was special. Sorry doesn't undo what you've done, the demon said softly, almost tenderly. Sorry doesn't bring them back. Sorry doesn't close the seals or silence the trumpets or stop the beast from rising. Sorry is just a word you say to make yourself feel better. It was right. Of course it was right. The ground beneath us shook as another pillar shattered. I heard screaming from the city below, thousands of voices joining in a chorus of terror that would never end. I'd done that. All of it. Not through malice, but through faith. Through unquestioning, absolute, damning faith in something that told me what I wanted to hear. The demon pulled me closer, and I felt its breath on my face, cold as the void between stars, smelling of sulfur and ash and the death of hope. Death. Any last words? It asked, almost mockingly gentle. I thought about that. About what you say at the end of the world when you're the one who ended it. I thought about asking for forgiveness, but I had no right. I thought about screaming defiance. But what was there to defy? The damage was done. I thought about praying, but what God would listen to the man who destroyed his creation? So I said the only true thing left to say. I believed, I whispered. I really believed I was doing the right thing. I know, the demon said. And for just a moment, there might have been something like pity in its voice. That's what made you perfect. The talons tightened. The pain began, white-hot and absolute, beyond anything I'd imagined possible. And in that final moment, as the world ended and I ended with it, I understood the terrible truth. The apocalypse didn't come because evil triumphed. It came because a broken man wanted so desperately to be good. It came because faith without wisdom is just another word for damnation. It came because I'd been given a choice on a bridge in Lewiston, Maine, and I'd chosen to believe in something beautiful instead of questioning whether beauty could lie. My last coherent thought wasn't of God or redemption or mercy. It was of that night. The rain. The river. The light. The moment I'd been saved from dead and delivered into something so much worse. The moment the world ended, and I was too lost in hope to see it coming. Then the demon pulled me apart, and there was only darkness and screaming, and the knowledge that my name would echo through eternity. Not as a savior, but as the man who'd loved his way into destroying everything. The road to hell isn't just paved with good intentions. Sometimes it's built from them entirely, and I'd laid every stone myself.